Listen, this will not just be a story about movies or money. This will be a story about a man whom the world calls a legend, but who himself has always remained simple. And if you listen to the end, you will hear not only about Hollywood and world premieres, but also about pain, about strength of spirit, about a path that can be a lesson for each of us. Because this story is both about business and about the human heart. You know, there are dozens of actors in Hollywood who love expensive suits, private jets, and the attention of cameras. But there's one who does the opposite. He can buy a homeless person coffee. He can sit next to you on the subway, and you won't even recognize him. He helps stuntmen and technicians more than he helps himself. His name is KEANU Reeves. And this story begins very modestly. Imagine a little boy constantly moving from place to place. New cities, new schools, new faces. Each time he has to learn from scratch. He has no stability, no sense of home. His father left when he was very young. His mother worked as hard as she could to support the family. And the worst thing is that he grew up feeling like no one guaranteed him anything. He was not the best student. He was often confused in class because he had difficulty reading. The children laughed. The teachers did not believe him. But there was one thing that saved him from this chaos: hockey. Little KEANU would pick up a stick and go out onto the ice. There he felt freedom, speed, control. He was even nicknamed the Wall for his incredible goalie reaction. He dreamed of a career as a professional player. But life always had its own plan. One day, an injury put an end to his sports dreams. Imagine this moment. A teenager who saw his future in sports suddenly realizes that this will no longer be the case. For someone else, this would have been a defeat. But for him, it became a sign. Instead of closing himself off, he began to look for another path. He tried theater, and for the first time he felt that the stage could give him what he had been looking for so much in sports: emotion, freedom, a chance to prove to himself and the world that he could do more. Little did he know that this small step, acting in small productions, would one day lead him to the big screen. Imagine a young guy who is just starting to get a taste for the stage. He is not yet a star, but he already knows exactly what he wants from life: to act. To act so that people in the audience fall silent, so that they watch and believe his every word. KEANU took his first steps in the world of cinema, small roles, small scenes, and this gave him the feeling that the door to a great future was opening. But next to hopes, there was always a shadow, the shadow of personal losses. His childhood was not easy. His father left the family, and KEANU grew up without this male shoulder. For a boy, this is always a wound. As if somewhere deep in his heart there was an emptiness. And even when he tried to move forward, this emptiness reminded of itself. And then came the first great loss that forever changed his heart. His closest friend, actor River Phoenix. They were like brothers. They dreamed together, laughed together, made plans for the future together. And then one day, in the prime of life, River was gone. Overdose. A shock to all of Hollywood. And for KEANU, an emptiness that is difficult to describe in words. Imagine, yesterday you were sitting next to your friend, laughing. The scene after the funeral. Cameras, people, the crowd. Everyone is talking about the tragedy, about Hollywood, about the losses. And he is silent. He is just silent and looks somewhere at the ground. Because what can you say? It was a moment when the world seemed to be testing him. Will you survive? And he survived. He didn't break. But from then on, this special depth appeared in his eyes, which the audience later saw in his characters. But the trials did not end there. A few years later, he met the woman who became his true love, Jennifer Syme. She was not just a girl, she became a light for him. They dreamed of a child, of a family, of simple happiness. And here is this moment. The hospital, the maternity ward, the waiting. He stands in the corridor and prays that everything will be fine. But the worst happened. Their child was born dead. It was a blow that cannot be described. A tragedy that kills inside. They tried to survive it together. But a year later, a new misfortune, an accident, and Jennifer dies. Imagine, A person who has already lost a friend now loses a loved one and a child. One after another blows from which most people would not be able to get up. Keanu could have gone into the abyss. Alcohol, drugs, despair, this would have been logical for Hollywood. But he chose a different path. He became quieter, sadder, but stronger. His pain turned into something deeper, into an inner strength that we see in every look he takes on the screen. A scene that says a lot about him. He arrives on set after all these losses. Everyone is looking at him, waiting for him to break down, that he won't be able to work. And he just takes the script, sits down, and starts rehearsing. Calm, quiet, focused, as if nothing had happened. But inside, he was already a different person. And this is where his strength is born. Because every crisis that could break him turned into fuel. Every loss became a new layer of his soul. He didn't scream about his pain. He never used it as an excuse. He simply carried it with him and invested it in every role. This was his first great school of life. And it was thanks to these tragedies that he became who we know him to be. A man who knows how to be strong quietly. A man who can smile even when his heart is broken. A man who teaches us, it is not your circumstances that define you, but how you experience them. Imagine a young man with sad eyes, but with a strange inner energy. He had just experienced something that could break anyone. But instead of hiding from the world, Keanu goes forward. Hollywood at that time was cruel. If you didn't fit the mold, you simply weren't hired. He wasn't a classic handsome man. He didn't have a voice that would fill a room. But he had something else, authenticity. His first roles were small. A few words in a TV series, a cameo in a movie. But even there he worked as if it was the main role in his life. He didn't act to impress the directors. He acted to convey the truth. And people felt it. Every frame, every look. One of the first notable steps was the film Dangerous Liaisons. There he played alongside the monsters of acting, Glenn Close, John Malkovich. Imagine, a young guy, without experience, on the set among legends. He could have gotten lost. But he just silently observed, learned, let in every little thing. And you know what? He didn't get lost. His presence was remembered, not with loud words, but with quiet power. And the real breakthrough came with the film On the Crest of the Wave. It was a story about surfing, about freedom, about risk. And there Keanu finally revealed himself. His character was at the same time serious and naive, strong and vulnerable. And the world saw for the first time that this guy is not like the others. He is not playing Superman. He is playing a human being. Imagine this scene. He's standing on the ocean shore, the wind blowing his hair, and the roar of the waves nearby. This is not just a shot, it's a symbol. A symbol that Keanu has finally started catching his wave. And the audience felt it. He became a favorite, but not for beauty or effects, but for sincerity. Despite this, he remained simple. When other actors, after their first successes, bought expensive cars and threw noisy parties, Keanu could ride on an old motorcycle, stop at a cheap cafe, and treat the whole crew to lunch. He had a special feeling of gratitude. He always remembered that without the people around him, without technicians, without stuntmen, without makeup artists, his success would not exist. And one more thing made him unique. He never chased after roles at any cost. When he was offered something that did not match his spirit, he refused. In a world where actors were ready to do anything for fame, he chose the path of honesty. And this honesty began to bear fruit. It was a period when he was not yet a star, but he already felt that his path was in cinema. He saw that he could touch the hearts of the audience. He understood that even a small role can change a person if you put your soul into it. And this became his rule. Step by step he rose. Without scandals, without loud statements, without breaking the system. Just with his silence, his light, his sincerity. And that was just the beginning. Because ahead of him was a role that would not just change his career. It would change all of cinema. And even people's very idea of reality. It was The Matrix. In the late 90s, Hollywood was dominated by blockbusters with predictable heroes. Viewers saw the same thing: handsome macho men saving the world. And then a film came out that would turn everything upside down. A film that would question reality itself. The Matrix. Imagine a dark movie theater, thousands of people around the world holding their breath. And here is the moment that has become legendary. Neo dodges bullets. The camera rotates around him. Time slows down. The world becomes different. It was something that people have never seen before. And the face of this new world is Keanu Reeves. But the story is more interesting than it seems. Long before the premiere, many in Hollywood had doubts. Keanu? In the lead role? He's too quiet. He doesn't look like a superhero. He won't sell tickets. That's what producers, critics, and even some of the actors thought. But the Wachowski brothers saw something different. They saw in him not a standard star, but a person who could convince the world that reality is just an illusion. And they weren't wrong. For Keanu, this role was not just a chance. It was a challenge. He could have become an ordinary Hollywood face on the poster. But he chose a different path. Even before the filming began, he trained with stuntmen for months, studied martial arts, worked until exhaustion. The scenes that could have been done by stuntmen, he did himself. He gave himself completely. Because he believed, either honestly or not at all. And do you know what happened after the success? Instead of swimming in millions, he took a step that surprised everyone. He gave up part of his fee, more than $30 million, to give it to the special effects and costume teams. Because they were the ones who made this movie possible. Who else in Hollywood did that? Nobody. It was his gesture, his rule. I'm not alone. Success is always a team effort. And here's the contrast. While other actors were buying villas and yachts, Keanu was riding the subway. Imagine, after the premiere of a movie that changed the world, he's sitting in a train next to ordinary people. A simple jacket, ordinary jeans, no security. He could have bought hundreds of cars, but he chose simplicity. It was then that his image was born, a star who was not spoiled by success. In The Matrix, he was the chosen one. But in life, he remained one of us. People began to tell stories. How he gave up his seat on the subway to a woman. How he accidentally treated a homeless person to lunch. How he stood in line at the cinema alone, unaccompanied. And the world began to see in him something more than an actor. He became a symbol of kindness in a world where vanity reigns. The Matrix didn't just change his career. It changed him as a person. He realized he had a unique gift, to be a voice for those who often go unnoticed. His fame became a platform, but he didn't use it for himself. He used it for others. And you know what's the most powerful thing? When he was asked about success, about fame, he always answered quietly, "I'm just doing my job." And that was his magic. The Matrix gave him world fame, but it didn't make him a legend. His choices made him a legend. His humanity, his ability to remain simple in a world that screams, "Be louder." It was a moment of great transformation. From a simple actor, he became an icon. But the real miracle was that inside he remained the same guy, with a quiet voice, a kind heart, and a motorcycle racing through the night streets. And although it seemed that this was the peak of his story, in reality there was even more ahead. Because after The Matrix, the world wanted to see him always at the top. And life was preparing its trials again. After The Matrix, the world was never the same. Keanu Reeves became a symbol of the era, the face of cinema, a style icon, a hero of millions of fans. Everyone expected him to become a star of the first magnitude in Hollywood, to bathe in luxury, to appear at parties, to advertise brands, to build an empire of fame. But he chose differently. He chose a path that went against all the rules of the industry. And that is what made him an even greater phenomenon. The success of The Matrix opened the door to endless possibilities for him. Offers poured in from all sides. Fees were increasing. Contracts worth tens of millions were on the table. But instead of taking everything for himself, he did what no one expected. He shared. Keanu gave a significant part of his fee from The Matrix to the special effects and costume teams, to those who worked behind the scenes, because he believed that the real heroes of this success were not only the actors, but also those who spent their nights creating the world that the audience would later see on the screen. It was a gesture that shocked Hollywood. After all, everyone here is fighting for their own fame and fortune. But Keanu showed that greatness is not measured by the number of zeros in an account, but by the ability to share. That is why he began to be called not just a star, but a person who remained a person even at the top. He could have moved into a huge mansion, bought a fleet of supercars, become a regular at fashionable parties. Instead, he continued to ride the subway. He was seen with a book in his hands in an ordinary car, where he gave up his seat to a woman or an elderly person. He was photographed sitting on the street next to homeless people, talking to them as if they were his old friends. It was a striking contrast. The hero on the screen was saving the world, while in reality he remained an ordinary man who knew how to empathize and listen. The media didn't understand how this was possible. Hollywood built illusions, and Keanu destroyed them. He didn't want to be an icon, because he understood that icons are unattainable, and he wanted to stay close to people. His fame became global, but his heart remained quiet and open. His life has become a reminder. You can be part of the most high-profile projects on the planet and at the same time not lose yourself. You can have millions and still live modestly, appreciating simple joys. Keanu was not afraid to be different from everyone else. And this is what made him a global phenomenon. He showed that greatness is not about living better than others, but about living with others, side by side, equally. His refusal to be an icon became the strongest message. Because the world craves heroes, but it craves people even more. And Keanu Reeves became the one who proved true fame comes when you don't chase it. While most actors of his caliber turned their lives into an endless carnival of red carpets, private parties, and the glare of spotlights, Keanu went in a completely different direction. He always stayed a little apart from Hollywood, as if reminding the world, his life is not limited to roles or box office records. After The Matrix and John Wick, when the world saw him as a cult figure, he himself felt like just a wanderer looking for meaning in small things. And instead of buying palaces, he lived in an apartment, rode the subway, listened to music on headphones, and sat on benches in parks. It wasn't a pose or a PR stunt. It was him. His inner rebellion against vanity was simplicity. He didn't play the game with icons. He didn't aspire to the status of a legend, although he had long since become one. Keanu saw fame as something temporary, like a wave that rises and disappears, but true values remain: kindness, honesty, compassion. There was a certain childish naivety in him that made him even more real in a world that loves falsehood. He never tried to escape the shadow of his own success, but he also didn't let it control him. When people looked at him, they saw more than just an actor. They saw a man who refused to live by the rules imposed by the industry. He could sit on the curb with a sandwich. He could give his fee to stuntmen. He could be silent when everyone else was screaming. And in that silent modesty was his greatest strength. But perhaps the most striking thing about his life is that he never sought fame, but it always found him. People recognized him on the streets and did not see an unattainable star in front of them. They saw their own, someone with whom they could talk over coffee. He became an icon not because of high-profile scandals or glamorous social stories, but because he remained himself in a world that constantly demanded masks. His journey outside of cinema is a story about how a person can remain whole even when surrounded by billions of eyes and thousands of temptations. He became an eternal traveler, bringing light where others seek profit. And perhaps that is why we love him so much. He shows that fame does not necessarily have to change a person. It can leave them the same, simple, kind, real. Because Reeves is not just about movies. He is a symbol of choice, that the value of life is measured not by the number of roles or fees, but by how much light you leave in the hearts of others.